were sewing on one of the teams I help out with for our DC office, and he was like really sick. So I got an email late last night that was like, "Hey, could you come on and quickly do this research so we can get this motion filed today?" So then I'm up at 6, like, all right, find the one case. It's like, all right, there you go. So yes, that kind of crazy stuff does happen, and it's the pay scale that keeps you going for a bit. The joke in the industry is the golden handcuffs. But I would say one of the cool things, though, in having experience in a big law firm is, one, you get really, really good training. And after doing a skit at a big law firm, you're going to be able to go anywhere you want, whether it's the government, an NGO, or even going to lateral at another firm. You're going to get a lot of good opportunities. So that's always wonderful. And, for me, I love traveling. So earlier this year, right after New Year's, I went to go ski in Vermont. We have an office in Boston. So I worked for a week out of the Boston office. So having that kind of flexibility to meet other people, not only, to further your career, but also just in a social setting, it's really a cool aspect of having multiple offices and being in a big law firm. And you get a good variety of work because, your first couple of years, you think you know one thing. I'm a civil litigator, so I do a lot of work with banks, corporations. I do some class action work because that's the kind of things that, big law firms have the resources to handle, and a smidgen of white collar. But it's cool to know that if you want to try something new, those first couple of years before you get that niche, you have ample opportunity to do so, because it's really hard for some people to fall into something and they do it for 5 years and they realize, like, I don't want to do this at all. And it's really hard to make that transition later. So it's great to get a lot of experience in the beginning.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing there. And so we just touched on like a broader view of what big law looks like in all these different organizations. But I want to take it a step further, dive deeper into the details. What does a week in the life look like at your organization? Like, how many hours a week do you work, and how are you spending those hours?
So that's really varied for me. It kind of ebbs and flows, and it depends on the months. And I've noticed that it can depend on the practice group, which months are heavier. The deal, like business type practice groups, finance, mergers and acquisitions, those tend to be really busy at the end of the year because everybody's trying to get in closings before the new year comes. With litigation, I don't know if people are just hot-tempered when the weather's hot, but they are really busy in the summer and then might be slower as they get into the fall and winter. So I'm a transactional attorney. I don't really do litigation. So I tend to be busier at the end of year and then get a little break right after at the start of the year right now. So a typical, it's like, what is typical? The baseline, I guess, of what is just expected would be 40 hours. You'll usually work more. It can span from sometimes in a slow period of months, not quite hitting 8-hour days. And then in the really busy periods, easily getting to like 12 hours. So it's just not steady. And it's a pretty wide margin, but I would say for me, I'm not typically in the heavier end, which I've appreciated. My firm, all firms will usually give you a set of billable hours, like a benchmark based on the year. So for our firm, it's 1850, which really isn't bad. And that's something I think we'll get into with considerations. Where you work in the country matters. I'm in the Midwest, so people are a little bit more relaxed and our clients are a little bit more relaxed. So my life is a little bit more relaxed, but yeah, there's a bit of variety, and I work in a couple different practice groups I mentioned. So with my major, I knew I wanted to be in health, and I continued with that. But I also do work with the finance group and work with the employment group. So I kind of ebb and flow at different times based on those groups' busyness.
So I'll start first by talking about distinctions that Allison made. So when you talk about big law, you're talking about a type of law firm. And then when you talk about the kind of lawyer you are in that law firm, there's 2 or 3 groups. So Allison, like she said, she's a transactional attorney and she helps on deals. I'm a litigator, so I don't know as much of what transactional attorneys do, other than facilitate the deal making process, which sounds really cool, but it's different from litigation, which is what you would think of as more traditional attorney, where you're writing briefs, eventually arguing motions in a court setting. And then the third category that I kind of put off to the side would be regulatory work. So if I'm based in DC, I haven't done any regulatory work, but in DC, regulatory work is a big practice group where you're advising companies with how to conduct their business within regulations or how to challenge regulations. So it's a little bit of litigation, a little bit of transactional work. Sometimes those overlap. And like Allison said, transactional work has its own schedule and its own kind of, I think, goes up and down a lot more. So with litigation, your schedule is usually set by the court. So you know when you have a brief due. You know when a big argument's coming up. So you can plan your life around that. For the most part, I mean, sometimes stuff just happens, like someone will file an emergency motion and it's Friday and you have to turn something in by Monday. So, in that case, you can't really plan for it. You just have to get researching and writing. And the expectation, like Allison said, is similar. If you can bill 40 hours a week. And I'll just stop there.
Following up on what Gina and Allison have been saying with this 40 hours a week, when you work a job that's 9 to 5 and you're doing 40 hours a week, it doesn't necessarily matter what you were doing in that 9 to 5 period. When a lawyer tells you that they worked 8 hours a day, they're not telling you that they were sitting at the computer only for 8 hours. What they're telling you is they billed 8 hours. There's this discrepancy between billable work and non-billable work. For example, what we're doing right now in this panel, a lot of us could bill this for an hour as university professionalism, reaching out, sitting on a panel, and that would be an hour of non-billable work. And so we wouldn't count that in our 8 hours of billable work that we aim for in the day, as Allison said, the minimum. And that's kind of what you kind of learn as an early associate, is navigating this world where I need to be on enough to make sure I get these billable hours met and a little bit of non-billable hours. So it's really interesting kind of how, if you don't do the work, the firm doesn't make money. So it's really important that you do the work for the clients well and the firm gets paid. It's really one way to look at it. I think I'll leave it at there for that one.
Well, could you talk about billable hours a little more? You had touched on it, but just be like what billing actually means. No one told me that. So
yeah. The billable hours, when you get to the firm, right, you're gonna get assigned. I'm a litigator, just like Gina. So when I get busy, billable work especially means, my first trial was sitting down and prepping the witness I was going to direct, getting ready to cross-examine the other side's witnesses. So that kind of work, we bill it as preparation for trial. And then when I'm actually at the trial, I'm billing my time as attending and appearing at a hearing, because I'm actively doing something there. But let's say we're 2 weeks before the trial and I've just filed another motion. I want my witness to appear remotely, for example, because they're not going to be in the courtroom with me. I write that motion. I do the case law research to make sure I know the basis for the grounds for a witness to appear remotely. And that work would be billed as, drafting motion for remote appearance of witness for trial upcoming. And, I put that into our thing. We have a little billing program that we use. And this is kind of how your firm keeps track of, one, the hours that you're working and who you're working for, aka which client you're doing the work for. And at the end of every month, your partner or supervisors will go through all the bills. This is a huge thing in firms. This is why they say you have to bill, you have to do it. So they go through all these hours and then they send these bills off to the clients. And when we come back later, performance review, how we keep getting promoted and how we know we're doing a good job is the firm sees that. They pay us X amount of money and we make the firm Y amount of money. And the more we do that, the more profitable we are and the better and happier the firm is. So if you guys want to add anything onto that, I think that's always a interesting and nuanced topic that we don't get enough of in law school or even.
Anything to add, you two? Okay.
No, you did a great job.
Yeah, I was going to say that was actually one of the best definitions of billable hours I've ever heard. So I appreciate that for my own sake as well. And did y'all practice before something? You all complimented each other so well. That was fantastic. Yeah, you guys are killing it. So that was great. Now, thank you for doing that deep dive. But I want to hear a little bit about what would you say is your favorite part about your job, and then your least favorite part about your job, which we may have already heard about.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually forgot about billable hours, which is strange because it's the bane of my existence. But my favorite and least favorite, I feel like, are strangely similar. So one of my favorite things is that you get, like, the work setting, I guess, provides a lot of independence and autonomy. When I was in law school, I did a couple of different types of internships. One was at my current firm, one was with the judge, one was in-house at a hospital in their legal department. And I really liked that the firm was faster paced, and also that I felt like they really treated everyone like an adult and a professional. There wasn't a super strict dress code. You can tell by my colors. They were just like, if you have a doctor's appointment or if you need to go run and do something, you don't need to alert anyone. Just make sure you're getting your work done and go. And that was even before COVID. And now, of course, there's more flexibility to work from home or go into the office. But I really appreciate that flexibility and just like independence that it provides. And I went straight through undergrad, as I mentioned. So it was my first job. And that was a new concept because I was used to school and attendance and homeroom and just all kinds of things where people are kind of tracking your day. And besides the billable hours, my day was mine in a sense. So I really like that. I also like that it involves problem solving and that my day isn't always, it's not monotonous and it's not the same every time. I like that there's variety in it. I like that there are new questions and new challenges that I get to address. So it keeps me interested. And then my least favorite is kind of that I don't have full control of my schedule in the daily. You can just get a last minute assignment. It wouldn't necessarily be from the courts like Gina was talking about, but it might be from a partner who has their own plans that weekend and something came in and they need you to do it by first thing Monday morning. Or occasionally you might get something on a Saturday and they need it by Monday. So that extends throughout the week where you might have planned to do a workout class or something. And me and some of the other associates have talked about how you just have to be a morning person and do your workouts before work because something always comes up in the evening or you're going later than you expected. So not having control of that is a little tough because I'm a planner. Like I have a handwritten planner and really like to see what my day is going to be and kind of figure that out ahead of time. So not having that control is a little tough, but on the other end, I do like the flexibility that it provides. So
I would say my favorite part of my job, one of them are my colleagues and the partners that I work with. They are so smart and I am learning so much from them. I would think as a young person, I would bring a lot of value to the team, I have a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. I just came out of law school when blockchain was a big thing. So I know about the blockchain. These older people might not, but truthfully, once you've been established in the law for 20 or 30 years, you have seen a lot of issues, you have a lot of strategy ideas. And I just feel like being on calls with these people who are legal titans in their industry, I'm just soaking in all the knowledge. And it's very inspirational because I would like to jump on a call one day and be able to, decide the trial strategy. Just having, based on my years of experience, that to me is very cool. And the second thing that I really like about my job is I'm very lucky to work on the cases that I work on. So I got to go to a trial my first year, and representing one of the wealthiest homeowners associations in Miami, and I'm from Miami. So to go home for my first trial and have found the case that the judge later relied on and giving us a really advantageous ruling, that was a very special moment. So the great part about my firm is that we have lots of high stakes, very cool, meaningful cases, and they give me the opportunity to do important things on them. I'm not just like sending out emails and clicking buttons, or like I'm actually contributing to the legal scholarship there. So my least favorite thing, we've kind of touched on it, or the billable hour. There is, so once you start investigating firms, you'll see that a lot of firms will have a minimum. So Allison, it sounds like her minimum is $1,850. My law firm doesn't have a strict minimum, but the expectation is around 2,000 billable hours, and or over, if you can. And I just wish I could focus more on the work product and not worry about if I could work 6 hours on a brief, and that's like a lot of brain power because you are researching and writing. I wish I could call it a day after that. But no, you still have to find something to do for 2 more hours, or even longer if you need to make up work. So just having that pressure to always be on and thinking of your next assignment, when I really would like some downtime to just focus on the assignment at hand. That can be a little difficult.
I would say that my favorite thing is, I don't know, it's like learning new facts. It's some of the fun. I love trivia. We do like a work trivia every Monday, and I enjoy going through as a litigator, looking at cases and working on the case with my clients and kind of learning what my clients are up to in the world, and like, oh man, you guys invented this cool patent and it's helping like people recover from gunshot wounds. It's really amazing. And stuff like that. I think there's just a lot of odd knowledge you pick up as a lawyer, and you start to kind of pull that all in, kind of becoming a jack of all trades in some certain aspects. And that's really cool to have that opportunity. And especially what Gina said, being able to talk to a lot of intelligent people, not only your fellow attorneys, but just some of the clients you represent. It's really awesome to know kind of people's backstory, how they got to where they were. And you're just like, wow, it's just a million ways to do something, and people really show you that through your work. Of course, billing, I want to take the easy way out and say that's my least favorite. Definitely is number one, but I will say another thing. As a litigator, I bet, Gina, you probably don't like this either. Discovery. I mean, you guys might have, if you've watched Suits or anything like that, How to Get Away to Murder, it's like they're trying to get information across from each other, the two opposing counsels. And honestly, in real life, discovery is actually that bad. People don't want to tell each other anything. It's a whole game of, I want to tell you nothing, but I want you to tell me everything. And you're like, how do you even get through that? And like right now, I'm going through a huge discovery dispute where neither side wants to give information, and the judge is kind of weighing in like, you guys should give them the information. Be like, okay, cool. So yeah, discovery kind of sucks as a litigator, but besides that, it gets you good billables. So
to just respond to that, part of my least favorite part of billing is that I don't have as much discovery. I'm really your face. I know. Well, because I really wanted a firm where I didn't have to do discovery as much, because I wanted to do more substantive work. But now I feel like I may have played myself, in the sense that doing a lot of work means you're doing a lot of work. And just as an aside about discovery, if you guys are watching the Netflix series Inventing Anna, there's a scene where the defense attorney gets like all these boxes, And so that like that's what discovery is. Like you're getting all the boxes. I've never gotten physical boxes of discovery. I don't know why in TV shows they do it that, maybe because it's like the best physical representation. It's not exciting to get an email with a download link.
I was a summer associate. There was one time where I was tasked with watching the boxes as opposing counsel came in. They were in a secure location separate from the office. So I got to bill for the driving time, which is a nice thing if you ever have like work or cases that involve traveling somewhere. With litigation, they have depositions where they talk to the witnesses. You get to bill for the travel time. But yeah, I was watching people go through documents and making sure they didn't slip anything in their bag or write anything down or take any pictures. And that was my role for that project. So every now and then, I guess, people still get boxes.
It's good to know that TV shows aren't completely incompetent.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. That was great too. Yeah, I was anticipating the billable hours being the least favorite part for at least one of you. I know that's the informational interviews I do, that tends to always come up. So thank you for sharing there. And so we've talked a lot about your job, but now I want to know, how did you get there? What was the application process like for you? And was it something your law school set up through OCIs or on-campus interviews, or did you just find it on a job board and apply, or how did that go about?
So mine was actually an interesting mix of applying and fate, I guess, through networking and initiative. So my firm has a program where diverse applicants can apply for a summer associate position in their first year of law school. Usually you can't be a summer associate until your second year of law school. And it was a great opportunity. So they sent it to us pretty close to the due time. But I filled it out, I sent it in, and separately, one of the associates who works in the healthcare group and is also a Vandy alum came and spoke on a panel at my law school. And I thought, okay, she went to Vanderbilt, she's in health law, she's kind of living the life I want. So I went up to her after the panel and asked her if she would get coffee with me. And she set up the coffee in the Starbucks at the bottom of their office building. So then after we had coffee, she asked if I wanted to go up and meet some of the attorneys. So we went up and she introduced me to people who were just kind of hanging out in the office, weren't too busy. And when she sent me down on the elevator, she sent me down with this partner named Irv. And it turned into a real elevator pitch. I guess I don't remember what I said in the elevator to him. I don't think it was anything spectacular. I feel like he asked me where I was from and kind of just talked about me being in law school and why I was in their elevator. But I don't remember it being anything impressive. But when I got back to my apartment, I had an email from the alumna that I talked to, and she said that I really impressed Irv in the elevator and he wanted my transcript and a resume. And I found out after my interview, and I had been offered the position to be their 1L summer associate, that he told them, you have to interview this girl, bring her in, like, I think this is it. And they had already offered the position to somebody else. So I feel bad for that person. But I went in, I did the interview, and one of the partners actually asked me, why didn't I apply for the summer fellowship as a 1L associate? And I said, I did. Did you not get it? Or do I need to do anything else? But yeah, so I don't know if my application even made it to them or if it was all Irv from the elevator. But that was my journey to get into this firm. And I did my first summer, and you can get asked back for your second summer. And I accepted that, and then went in to my second year knowing that I would be with them after graduation.
So I didn't do a summer associate position at any law firm. I worked for the Department of Justice in the Virgin Islands for that summer. That was an experience. And luckily, through Duke, there was a Duke judge who was looking for an intern after graduation. And Duke and most schools have this kind of program where if you've graduated and you haven't gotten a job yet, Duke will pay you to intern in someone's chambers or at an office in the hopes that you make connections and then get permanent employment, and then they can stop paying you. And so that's how I started in these judges' chambers. And someone had actually quit the day before I arrived. So then I stepped into a clerkship position, which was an amazing experience. And we can talk more about that, about working for a judge. And that usually lasts 1 to 2 years, depending on the clerkship term. But once I had this clerkship, there's law firm recruiting in the January, February time. So sometime in January, I got an email from a Duke Law alum at Boyd Schiller saying, "Hi, I am a Duke alum. I love hiring Duke students. I would love to meet you at our cocktail reception that we're hosting for all clerks in the area." So I went to that cocktail reception, just had a great time meeting attorneys. And from there, I received an email like, "Please send us your application materials. We'd love to interview you." I followed up and got the fastest job offer I've ever gotten in my life. And it really was kind of like Allison's story, through my law school's connections, where you meet someone who meets someone and like kind of puts you on the track. So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, my first summer I did immigration work, and then the second summer I did on-campus interviews, the OCIs, and I threw in some applications as well on the side. And a friend basically said, "Hey, I know you kind of enjoy international law. This firm is just doing a huge merger. You should consider them." Applied through their website portal, and the interviews all worked out. And I would honestly say the hardest part was deciding whether to be a litigator or a transactional attorney. I did, a mock trial for years, but I was like, wow, this contract writing stuff and making deals, that's also really cool. So I don't know, but make sure your application materials are always clean. Those cover sheets, that's just the easiest way to toss out an application. So keep those crisp.
Awesome. Well, thanks. It's so cool to hear how it was all different for you all. I think that's normally whenever I speak with people about this, they're like, "Oh, my school had on-campus interviews and I did a summer internship with them and then they hired me," and that's like the case across the board. So really cool to hear about all that, and especially want to draw attention to Allison's answer: network people, talk to people, use those Vanderbilt connections. It's the best. Okay, so now we're actually going to take it back from before the big law years. And I want to know, you all went to great law schools, but why did you choose your specific law school?
So for me, part of it was their programs. They had a health law program and concentration. And I went into Vandy wanting to be a surgeon. I was a biomedical engineering major, and I had a very different path. And when I decided that I wasn't going to go that path, I wanted to keep health as part of my journey and my career, and decided that health policy might be a better fit. And one of my mentors through a class that I took at Vandy recommended that I look at Case for law school because they had a good health law program. The Cleveland Clinic is here, and so there are good opportunities to network and intern with them. So I applied and I looked at it, and it seemed like a really good fit. Based on that program, they also gave me a really good scholarship. Their health law program in the school had good rankings. And so I knew that it wouldn't be too difficult, hopefully, to find work afterwards, and that the name would probably help. And I liked the campus when I visited it. I think that's a really big part of it. At the end of senior year, I still hadn't decided where I was going to go. And I was between Case, which is in Cleveland, and a school in San Francisco. And everybody just kind of laughed and like assumed I was going to go to San Francisco. And I probably thought I was going to go to San Francisco, but I didn't get to visit that school. And I did get to visit Case, and their campus really surprised me because I thought Cleveland was going to be this big Rust Belt, like dying city. And the campus was full of grass and museums and like just really nice. The people were really nice. The city was better than I expected, and the cost of living was really good in Cleveland. And I recently went to San Francisco just to close that loop to visit a friend. And it was cold in June, and it was 80 in Cleveland. So I was upset. So it was a good fit because I'm originally from Alabama. So cold summers would not work. But yeah, the health program that they had, their concentration, the ranking of the school in that program, the scholarship they gave me, and the campus and the city.
So I have a Hispanic mother who has seen Legally Blonde, and she's just like very confused how I did not get into Harvard. And so I very disappointingly went to Vanderbilt and then Duke. So the Harvard's at the South. She was still not convinced, was like as good a school as I could have chosen had they accepted me. But in the end, I was very, very happy to get my offer from Duke. Mostly because I knew I wanted to, I was really, really hoping to end up in DC. And so one thing when you're looking at law schools, you want to look at the geographic areas where they send their alums. And I think if you want to end up in New York City, I think it's a lot easier to just go to any top school and land a job. But certain markets have just more alumni that tend to hire more alumni. And so Duke really checked off all the boxes in potential job placement, not being too cold, and cost of living during law school, because I guess I already have expressed how much I did not enjoy my Towers experience. And so I went straight through, and in law school, I was like, I really do need like my own 1 bedroom. And that was much more affordable in Durham, North Carolina than it was anywhere else. So those were all my decisions.
Yeah, so I'm a Maryland native, and I knew I wanted to practice in Maryland or DC around my family. I'm barred in both Maryland and DC, and I do primarily work in those 2 areas. And the law school too, University of Maryland, is good with immigration and environmental law. So a lot of my time at Maryland was in these programs. I mean, I think one of my favorite moments, honestly, was traveling with the environmental program to Malaysia to give a talk. And then through that networking is a good thing. I got to help write a textbook chapter with some European authors. And it was just like a really cool experience working with them and having like this opportunity out of nowhere. So I don't know, always talk to people. You never know what they're going to give you.
I'm a big fan of that strategy. Yeah, so that's awesome. And I heard so many different criteria, just as all 3 of you were talking about things you assess whenever you're thinking about going to law school, including cost of living or the weather or employment outcomes. What other criteria do you think is important for students to assess whenever they're considering what law schools to apply to or attend?
So I think a lot of them have been touched on. I think the programs at the school, what they're known for, any graduate type program that you're going to, if you have an idea of what you want to do coming out of it, then it's helpful to look for programs that are really good at preparing you to go into that space. My school has really big health law and international law programs. So we get a lot of students who want to work in diplomatic relations or certain programs abroad, and they have a lot of opportunities for you to do that while you're in school, and same with healthcare. Or if the school has a really good mock trial team and you want to be a litigator, that can be a good consideration. So the programs, I think the network, if you have an idea of what area of the country you want to be in or what cities you might want to go like get your license in. Now, the universal bar, so the licensure exam that you have to take to practice as an attorney, there are some states that accept one test across the states that are all a part of that agreement. So it's a little less of a concern if you're going to one of those places, but some states still don't have the universal bar. So if you pick that place and you want to take the bar there, you're really committing to it. So if the school's close to that network of people that you're going to be meeting through all the events your school puts on, or through the different internships and just the connections that they're probably going to connect you to, then that's a useful leg up to have to go ahead and build your professional network while you're in school. And then I was kind of similar to Gina in that I lived in Mayfields 2 out of my 4 years at Vandy. So I was definitely ready to not have roommates and wanted to get an apartment and live by myself when I went to law school. I mentioned that the cost of living is really affordable in Cleveland, especially when compared to San Francisco. So that can be another consideration. But beyond just cost of living, I mean, do you like the city? So I had been to San Francisco, not for a while, but I knew what to expect there, but I hadn't ever been to Cleveland. And so coming and seeing the campus, I think made a huge difference. And I know people said the same thing for undergrad, like going and actually being in that space and meeting people. If you go for an entering students day or even just a campus tour, that can really help figure out, could you see yourself there, and do you want to be a part of that community? So those 3 things I'd say.
Nothing to add. Yeah, covered it all.
I would just add one thing about money. If you know, or you have an inkling that your first few years out of law school, you want to be doing public interest law, so working at a nonprofit, working, for the government in an entry-level role, or, immigration, environmental law, any of these that the pay scale is going to be a bit, more entry-level, and it's going to take some adjustment and some time to accumulate experience, to also accumulate salary level. You should look at it when you're looking at your offers on scholarship, financial aid, etc., how much money each of those schools is going to cost you. And if you're going to go right after and do, a job that's going to come out with $50,000 to $60,000, how much debt you are willing to go into to go through the law school process. I think that's just something to always keep on, your periphery. Student debt is a serious thing, so it's always important to be aware of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Law school is a large financial investment. So definitely pay attention to that. And if you are going into public interest, come schedule an appointment with me to talk about loan repayment assistance programs. We cover them a lot in the public interest career exploration, but happy to talk about those more too. But yeah, all great criteria to assess your law school. And so one last question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the students. So if you have any questions, start thinking of them. But what advice would you give to the undergraduate students here, even yourself, who are preparing to apply to law school? What's one thing that you would want them to know?
So one thing that I always say is to cast your net far and wide and stay open, both to the school and the practice. So going into law school, I didn't plan to practice law. So I mentioned I went into undergrad not planning to go to law school, and then I went to law school not planning to be an attorney. I wanted it as a background and planned to work maybe in like hospital administration or maybe policy or just something where it was useful but not a major part of my day-to-day job. And I went in and loved it, which is kind of my second piece of advice, to not see it as like a 3-year sacrifice or battle that you have to go through. You might really enjoy it. I'm one of those people. I think it's because I started out in a science major. When I got to law school and they wanted me to read and write, I felt like I had found my calling and my people. I always really enjoyed analytical classes and debate, and that's the bread and butter. So if that's something that you enjoy, prepare for it to possibly be, it feels like you found your people and you found your niche. A lot of the people there I felt like were similar personality types. The classes I really enjoyed. So just that it can be a positive thing, and something that you can be really excited about. And you never know what class you might take that changes your career direction, or what advice you get from a professor or job you see on a panel that you think is a good fit for you, you didn't expect. So just stay open as you're going through it.
As for advice into getting into a good law school or getting a job in big law, I'll just say that you guys already know how to do it because you made it to Vanderbilt. No one just like walks into Vanderbilt. You had to get the grades, you had to have the extracurriculars, you had to have the test scores, and that honestly, like that kind of achievement and that motivation is what you're going to need to get into a good law school, which will set you up for a big law job if that's what you want to pursue. So you know how to do it, if that's something you want to do. But practical advice for being a good lawyer, I think, is while you're at Vanderbilt, take classes where you can write. And this is something that I've been told before, like, you know, right, being a lawyer is a lot of writing, and so I did try to schedule my classes around, some classes that had exams, but I also did choose one or two classes where I was going to continually be writing essays or have like a big project due, a big essay due. And as much as it hurts to get a lot of criticism from your professors now about how much you suck as a writer, it's much better to do that in undergrad than get to law school, have to learn the skills and be told again. And then, even if you make it into as a lawyer, like even when I clerked for my judge, I was still being told that I sucked as a writer. So that's just something you're gonna have to get over, but you might as well start right now, taking as many writing classes as you can and cleaning up your writing, getting to the point. And then the last thing, getting to the point, is that you should take fun classes. I think maybe, I'm not sure for all practices, but being a litigator, one of the advantages I feel like I bring to my firm and to my cases is that I can make connections between concepts or ideas or legal theories or facts. I have the creative ability to be like, oh, this reminds me of XYZ. And I think a lot of that just came from the fun classes I took at Vanderbilt. I took Russian fairy tales one year. That was great. Obviously, any class with Professor Bess, who does the World War II, he's still teaching it. So really lean into your liberal arts college if you're sure you want to be a lawyer.
So if you're thinking about patent or STEM, Mechis, chemis, do your thing. That's important too. Patent prosecution, need a STEM degree for that. So that's important. I would say the one other thing I would add is, take your time with it. Like, really go ahead and sit down with your materials, the professors that you're thinking about to be your references, where you want to go. Take your time with the process. Like, this is one of those moments in life where there's really no rush. You can be someone who goes through K to JD, kindergarten straight through and get your JD, or you can be someone who takes a break, you go do consulting for a little bit, you go teach English or something, and then you come back to law school. That, law school will always be there. So when you feel most ready for it and prepared, that's exactly when you should do it.
All great advice, as has been shared this entire meeting. So appreciate you all. We do have a few minutes left. So students, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand via the little buttons at the bottom of the screen there, and while I can call on you. Yeah, any questions? Okay, I saw Christians first, and then I can go Caroline after.
Okay, awesome. Can you all hear me? Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for coming out today and all the information. We're really appreciative of you all's time. My question's relating to law school. I just wanted to see if you guys could speak more to the Socratic method of law school and some of your experiences in cold calling from professors.
And for the students' questions, if anyone feels particularly called to answer a question, feel free to take it away.
I guess I can still start. I would just say that it's not a myth. It definitely will happen, and is the preferred method and sometimes required method, I think, maybe through the faculty of your classes, especially in your first year. So in your second year, you can start to choose more elective classes towards different areas of law that you're interested in, or that you want to get a specific training in to prepare for the bar. But in your first year, contracts, property, criminal law, they will use the Socratic method. You might start to notice that some of the professors have a trend. Most of them don't go by seating order, but we did have assigned seats. And some I noticed would kind of work their way towards the middle, or maybe move from odd rows to even rows. So you might notice some patterns and can kind of prepare. But outside of just the nerves, it's a good exercise to help you prepare for thinking on your feet and being prepared. It's easy to procrastinate because your finals tend to be at the end of the semester. And for most of your classes, that'll be your only grade. So you might think, I can take notes and go to class and then just make it absorb the information and get it into a logical system for me to study closer to the end of the semester. But with the Socratic method, it helps you stay engaged in class and continue to fully prepare, read the cases, try to think through some of the takeaways. And that can be really helpful just to keep you accountable. So,
anything to add?
Yeah, I would just add, this is one of those moments where you can be known as the nice person in law school, where if you know and see and watch someone struggling, it's free brownie points to help them. One, because they'll be like, oh, thank you so much for saving me in class. But two, it's also brownie points with the professor, because they'll think they've already done your cold call. So then your cold call will just not come. So, I mean, it's great. It's like win-win situation.
Love that strategy. Love it.
Yeah, I'll just add, I really like the Socratic method. And for people who don't know what that means, it's like when the professor calls on you, that's what a cold call. It's like literally like you may or you may not know if they're going to ask you questions that day. But I liked it. And that's kind of how my job has been. I mean, my judge would just call me and be like, where are we on this? Like, what do you think we should do? And partners will call you too and do the same. So you should really practice now saying like yes, no, and then providing the reason. Like, start out, you'll be great in law school, you'll be a very helpful associate.
Awesome. And Caroline, I think you were next.
Yeah, so you guys obviously mentioned so much about billing hours, and it can be really time consuming, like right when you're out of law school. Do you ever feel intimidated, like later on, like if the work-life balance will ever slow down, like if you ever wanted to take more time for yourself or spend time with family or something? Like, do you think you can find that in this career path, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's definitely possible to find. I have pushed, I guess, continuing to make time. And my firm is interesting. I don't know how common this is, but we don't have a PTO policy for the attorneys. They just prioritize communication. And that goes back to the independence, I guess, where they just expect that if you have projects coming up, Gina mentioned with litigation, what the court deadlines are, what the timing is. You can kind of plan out when you have briefs or things coming up, and you know that you need to be locked in and you're going to be busy during those periods. But as long as you give people notice and you let them know that you're taking a trip, that's perfectly fine. And that's for the bigger trips. One of the benefits of everybody's acceptance of remote work is that if I want to take a long weekend, I can just take my laptop. And if I have things to do, I can work on my laptop while we're driving or on the plane, and then start my vacation that Friday and continue on through the weekend. You don't even have to let anybody know. Like, as long as you're still getting your work done and meeting deadlines, no one necessarily expects that you have to be in their face and present all the time. There is something known as FaceTime in firms where you do want to be, I guess, available and recognizable to partners. You want them to see that you are putting in the time and you are engaged in the work, and not kind of be a stranger. But I have a trip coming up at the beginning of March, and I just let the partners that I tend to work with know, and went ahead and put it on my calendar that I'll be out of office. And then you just can, you're communicative with people. But I think for the most part, everybody's understanding that you're going to burn out if you don't take any vacation, if you don't have any time to yourself to recharge. And aside from like trips, also finding hobbies and things that you can do, just like you had extracurriculars growing up. Like I played tennis and take dance class, and like have just found things that I enjoy doing, have running TV shows or movies that I'm planning to watch. You just find things that you can do to get your mind off of work and like create that free time for yourself.
I think a lot of it depends on firm culture. So I've been really lucky to work at a law firm where the partners know me, they care about me, they've been very supportive when I've needed to take time off. For example, when I had a family member pass, my grandpa's funeral was literally on the day a summary judgment motion was due, which is like a huge deal, right? And I was not even, they let me spend time with my family, and that was awesome. Yeah, but I mean, it is a lot of work. At the same time, it's right now a compromise I'm willing to make. I mean, I'm young, I don't have kids. I live in an amazing apartment in DC and bought myself a lot of nice furniture. So, and paid off a lot of student loan debt. So there's definitely pluses to the situation. And I found that my law firm has always been supportive when I needed time for myself. And as a caveat, like, yes, I've had a really positive experience, but if you are interviewing for big law jobs, law firms lie. There's all these weird lists out there of, like best work-life balance. And then I hear horror stories from people who work at those firms that are not great work-life balances. So when you are navigating the process, I mean, really talk to associates there. If you're a woman, if you're a person of color, like talk to those people about how they experience the law firm. So while I endorse my law firm and I've had a great experience there, I have people in my year who've had horrible experiences at amazing work-life balance firms.
Yeah, ditto everything Gina just said in that last 60 seconds. I don't want to repeat it, but ditto everything she just said there. I will say too, some firms like, Gina's, Allison's, mine, they do try to stress too to make sure you do take time off. I remember last July, they sent an email out to associates that hadn't taken at least like a full week of vacation. That was like, hey, we've seen you haven't taken a full week off yet. Like, how are you doing? Do you want to take a full week off kind of thing? So that's always a really good sign to know when they're like, hey, take a break, because, we don't want burnout to be happening. And just as something kind of in the far future kind of thing, but to this question of where does the work-life balance come when you start having families, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things that firms are very good at is kind of, hierarchy, right? That's what firms do. It's how they pay people more and less. And you'll see there like different pathways. So, there are people who become partners, people who become of counsel, and people who kind of are in between these kind of roles, or they're just senior counsel. And the purpose in kind of doing that demarcation is that people who are headed towards that partner level in that last 4 years of being an associate, they know that they're churning up their hours, they're aiming to become a partner. But people who know, they're like, yeah, I'm not trying to work that hard. I just want to have a base level. Like, I do good work. I have great relationship with my clients, and they have the level that they go to. And firms are really good at kind of adjusting those scales to help people achieve what they want based on the kind of life that they're trying to live. So that's always something you can look and ask about.
Well, I'm glad 3 great people like yourselves all seem to be at good firms that are treating you right. Glad to hear it. And how about we just all get a round of applause, whether it's in person or virtual. This was awesome. Really do appreciate you 3 taking the time out of your day. We know how busy you are, and so it means a lot that you'll come speak to all of us.